Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is another Raid Shadow Legends video, and we are on the test server today, and we're going to take a first look at the Fusion Champion that we have going on today, Bivald of the Thorn. Now, this is an interesting champion. He brings some interesting things to the kit, and which really focuses a lot around Provoke. And I actually think Provoke is one of the best debuffs you can have in this game. Control is massive for getting through waves in every single part of this game, whether we're talking Doom Tower, Faction Wars, or Dungeons. It doesn't really matter. Any of those, having things like Provoke is massive, because when you can control the enemy, you have full control over the fight. You can decide who's going to be doing the damage, who's bringing the debuffs. You don't have to worry about all of your champions dying because the enemy is focused on hitting your one champion that's provoking them. Bivald the Thorn is going to be good for that. He's an interesting champion overall. Now, I will say this, before we get into looking at his kit, which is what we'll do next, I just have to talk a little bit about fusions in general, right? Now, I'm always a big fan of saying, until you fully test a champion, you don't know how good they are. And I've had an opportunity to give him a little bit of a test, right? Not complete in every aspect of the game, but I have been able to test him a little bit. And from what I can see, this is probably one of our weaker fusion champions that we've had. It's not to say that he's useless or not worth getting. I don't think that's the case, but I do think he is one of the weaker ones. So what I would say is, if you are one of those people that is really limited on your resources, I mean a true free-to-play player, I can fully understand and might even support skipping this fusion, because I don't think he's going to be for everybody, and I don't think he's going to be a game-changing champion for anybody's account, certainly not mine. Now, part of the reason why I don't think he's going to be great is, from what I've tested, his damage isn't very crazy, which is fine. You don't have to be a great damage dealer to have a big impact on your team. One of the things that he is uniquely gifted at is placing these debuffs even when he weaks hits. So that means, regardless of what you're going against, he's going to have a very strong chance of provoking the enemy every single time. And, you know, he brings some things that are useful in almost every area of the game, right? He's going to be helpful in Hydra. He's going to be great in Doom Tower, campaign, dungeons. He's just not going to be OP in any of it. I actually see him having a fairly decent impact in things like Arena too, as a control champion there. Keep all of that in mind. What I want to do today, though, is I want to take him into Dragon so you can get an idea of the damage he does. I have him built out to deal decent damage. I didn't give him an OP build. And then I'm going to go ahead and take him into Doom Tower so you can hopefully get an idea of his control possibilities and how good he can be in that. And then I'm going to rebuild him and bring him in Arena so you can kind of see an example of how he might work in that situation as well. So that's the plan for today. I think you guys are going to get a good kick out of this. And that's what we got going today. I'm really excited about this video. This is going to be an interesting one, I think, and I'm going to try to keep it pretty brief. So after all of that introduction, let's go ahead and look at his kit. Before we get into it, I do want to remind you, if you haven't, hit that subscribe, that notification bell. And as always, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that Soundstripe link down below, and you can use code DeadwoodJedi and save some money on that. Okay, this is Bivald the Thorn. Now, I think he looks pretty awesome. I think the design is great. I love the thorns. I love the little book on the back of his chest. I think he's a very cool champion for the Sacred Order. Now, as far as his kit goes, first thing we should look at real quickly here, I think this is the most important thing, and it's something I neglect a lot. How many books does this guy take? He's going to take 11 books, 4 on the A1, 4 on the A2, and then another 3 on the A3. Can you get away without booking him? I think you can get away without booking the A3. It's extra damage and a cooldown, but this isn't his main ability, right? His A2, you're going to want to book, though, because it's going to take a 75% chance of landing Provoke and Leech on a 2-hit ability to making those 100% chances to land. And I do think that is important. Plus, the cooldown will turn this into a 3-turn cooldown, which will help a lot as far as keeping that Provoke up and controlling the enemy. So that's definitely something I would recommend. And then his A1 here, it's some debuff chance, extra chance to place Provoke on that A1, which is good. So I would probably recommend booking that as well. For me, I'd want at least a minimum of 8 books to get that A1 and A2 fully done, and then a maximum of 11. It's not crazy, not great, not terrible, just decent. Now, as far as the kit goes itself, his A1 is a single attack, right, with a 30%, 50% when booked chance of placing Provoke. The cool part about him is he also heals an ally with the lowest HP by 15% of the damage inflicted. of course, as I said, he's not a great damage dealer, which means this heal is not great either. Now, cool thing about his kit, and you'll see this throughout, is that provoke can be placed even if this attack lands as a weak hit. And that is a massive, massive ability. I really can't emphasize that enough. Being able to place a provoke debuff when you weak hit is great. So his affinity won't matter as far as am I landing this ability or not. He is an HP based champion, and so is all his damage, so that's really nice. Now his A2 here is kind of the big one. This is the kit that the part of his kit I think really makes him. Places it's a 2-hit attack. The first one has a chance of placing provoke, the second one a chance of placing leech. Provoke for 1 turn, leech for 2 turns. So there's a lot of actual healing in his kit. The hard part is, of course, he just isn't a super great damage dealer, so you're not benefiting as much from that as you would otherwise. So something like Leech, if you're not dealing massive amounts of damage, you're not healing up a lot either. But it is good for his enemy, and I can see that being a useful skill for Hydra. It also places a strengthen buff on this champion, which is great. That reduces the damage you take by 25%. That's very solid, right? That's a good way of him helping stay alive. And strengthen's a little bit more of a rare buff, so you can complement that a little easier by bringing in champions that do ally protection or increase defense as well. And like I said, these land even if it's a weak hit. And then we have his A3 here, and this is kind of an interesting kit. This is actually a really nice ability here. It's an AoE hit, and the damage increases by 5% for each debuff on the enemy. So the more you debuff the enemy, the more that hit is going to do damage. So obviously we can see some synergy with things like bosses as well, and this will also heal all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted. So it's kind of like an AoE leech. It's an AoE what would you call it, like lifesteal gear for all your allies. It's really actually pretty nice, and it is a fairly significant heal for sure. And it places a shield buff on them as well by 20% of the damage inflicted. So as much as you heal them, that's as much as you're giving them a shield. So all of that is pretty darn good. His passive ability here decreases the damage taken by all allies from enemies unprovoked by 15%. Again, pretty solid. That's not a bad thing at all. So I think there is a lot of potential with his kit as far as being pretty good. Now, obviously, I haven't even booked him yet, so I'm going to go ahead and book him before we start this so we can really see what his damage is like. From what I've seen, it's nothing crazy, but it might be better than I was considering before simply due to those books. He does have a good aura too. All battles 28%. Now, as far as the way I've kitted him out, and this, of course, is important, right? What the gear always matters more than the champion themselves. People get that confused a lot. The gear matters a lot. So I got him at about 220 speed, 108 crit rate, 210 crit damage, 333 accuracy, and 60,000 HP. Now his attack's based off HP, right? So 60,000's okay, but I feel like this is a fairly average build for most people. The speed's going to be important, and this is faster than a lot of people out there are going to be able to build them, but this is important so that I can actually run him in hard Doom Tower and give you an example of what he can do. The 60,000 HP though, I do feel is accomplishable by most people out there in the game. 100% crit rate obviously, but 210 crit damage is not a wild amount. So I haven't kitted him out in crazy gear. Same thing with the 333 accuracy. So some of this may have to be rebuilt, especially for arena, just because I'm going against the top CC. So, you know, and just even to have him work in there, I'm going to have to build that up a lot and make him more of an extreme style build. But this should give at least an example of what he can do. You can see I have a bunch of different kind of just sets on him: crit rate, perception, speed set, nothing super OP or crazy. There's no savage on him, so just kind of keep all of that in mind. Mastery wise, I went down the offensive tree here, down to Helm Smasher, and then the support tree to add a little bit more accuracy, a little bit more turn meter boost, and just general utility. Now, very easily could have gone on defensive tree, and maybe that would be a better route. Offensive tree, there's a lot of different ways you can build this out as well, but I thought this would give us a nice little example here. Now, to compare him, like I said, I wanted to use Operdin Clanfather. Now, I like Operdin a lot. I think he's a very solid champion, and a very decent HP damage champion, right? He's not obviously an OP damage dealing champion, but what he does do is hit decently hard for his kit. So how did I build him out? 100% crit rate, only 155 crit damage. So keep that in mind. He's only got 3/4 of the crit damage that I have on Bivald. So it's going to be should be a lot less damage, but we'll see how it goes. But this should give us at least a decent example. 61,000 HP is very equivalent to what Bivald has. So let me go ahead and book Bivald, and then we'll take him into Dragon and see how he does. Okay, I suppose the best place to take him in to really see his damage is on stage 24, where he's not weak hitting, neither is Operdin. And this should give us a pretty good example of the kind of damage they can do. So let's go ahead and get in here, and we'll see what we can do. I only have 4 champions in here, it's fine. Lydia for the decreased defense and weaken. Chimera just to reset skills so we can see it again, and then the 2 other champions, right? So we can just kind of get it started here, get that decreased defense and weaken out. Then I'll slow it down one time. Let's see Operdin here, right? This is an A2 ability. It's his big AoE hit. We can kind of see the damage that he's going to do. Boom, 20,000, 26,000. It's a single hit attack, so that's important to remember, right? So on that one attack, 26,000 damage. Now we have him. We're going to use this admonition of the barbs, the A2 skill, the big one from him. Let's see how this does. 15, 16. I think I saw 20,000 in there. On a 2-hit, it's not crazy damage. We're talking maybe 30, 35,000 at the high end. It's not a wild amount, and this is why I think he has some issues, is he's just not a great damage dealing champion. So that is 100% the limitation in his kit here. And that's definitely going to be a problem. We can see Operdin's A1 here, right? Just give an example. 9,000 on each one, almost 10,000 on each one. Yeah, his A3 doesn't even do a hit. We can see his A2 again, kind of get an idea. Yeah, again, 20, 27,000 depending on the kit. We can look at his A3 here. There's a big hit from Bivald, right? Boom, 24,000. I think I saw 40,000, maybe a 50 here. So pretty decent on that A3. The more debuffs we have on the enemy, the more damage it does. So that's definitely a factor. Still not crazy numbers, right? This is not like an OP damage dealing champion, but you know, he's actually putting out decent amounts. So at least with that A3 he is. I don't know about the rest of his kit, but the A3 would look pretty solid. So we're getting an example of like what exactly can happen here. We'll let the enemy kind of go through and we'll see again what we can do here. The one last thing I want to check is his A1 skill, and of course I forgot to click it off auto, so hopefully we'll be able to see that here in a second. All right, there we go. Yeah, one more time. Boom, cool. All right, one more time. A1. We can go on Marksman. I know we were doing Crimson Helms, who's a little bit stronger, but we'll just do the A1 on Marksman. See. Yeah, 21,000. I mean, it's good. Operdin's 2-hitter kind of did the same amount of damage, right? So nothing wild. And Operdin has 50, 60 less crit damage. He's okay, right? He's okay. He's nothing crazy good about his kit damage-wise. So this is why I don't think that he's going to be a crazy OP champion for us. Now, obviously, you know, you can build him better, right? Like anybody that has a Mountain King knows you can stack 100k HP and get good crit damage on a champion, but it's going to be hard to do that and get the accuracy in there, right? And that's kind of the difference that we're talking about. If you have somebody like Magnar, you understand that. You really need to build him for damage if you're going to really stack that HP on. And so that becomes a little bit counterintuitive sometimes, a little bit trickier. I think that for most wave stuff, for most people out there, he's going to be best used as a control champion, placing those debuffs, because he can do it even with the weak hits, and that, you know, gives him a lot more utility. So anyway, that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and take him in the Doom Tower, and we can kind of see, I'll showcase a little bit more of his, you know, damage, or not damage, but his control abilities. Okay, so this is the team I'm going to bring into Doom Tower, right? We're going on level, I think it's 81. It's not super high, but definitely high enough where this should be a challenge for us. I'm going to put him in the lead. We're going to bring in Vergis, so Vergis should protect him with his ally protection. That's going to help. And then hopefully he'll be able to provoke the enemy and keep them focused on him for the duration of the fight. We'll see how this works. I do have Siphi in there just to make sure everybody stays alive and protect us. She doesn't deal damage. She's just going to enable everybody else. Same kind of idea with Lydia, getting that AoE decreased defense and weaken out there. And then I do have Obero in here, hopefully to do damage. She's probably not the best choice for that, but I also don't want this fight to go too fast. I want to have a little bit of time playing with this so we can kind of see how it works. So that's the team we're going to use. Let's see how this works here. I did want to be careful not bringing any other control champions so we can really see what he does. Now, one reason why we're going against blue affinity champions is I want to be able to see and showcase how his debuffs land even as weak hits. Now, 333 accuracy should work for, I believe, all of this. I don't think there's going to be any issues there, but that is something that you'll obviously want to pay attention to. So here we go. His A2 skill, right? Boom. And you can see Provoke and Leech is on everybody, whether he weak hit or strong hit, didn't matter. And now we can just kind of watch him do his work and go through this as he's going to absorb all these hits. And then hopefully with Siphi in there, with Verges protecting him, he'll still be able to heal up and stay alive throughout the fight. But you can see, because he provokes the enemy, they're all attacking him, giving everybody else a chance to take down the enemy, so we don't have to worry about them. And that's really the big point about having control champions. If I don't give them a chance to go, then I don't have to worry about them interrupting me and killing my champions. This is why I've gone through Doom Tower almost always. I use my 2 Coronars to provoke the enemy and just force them to hit my guys, and I never have to worry about it, whether I'm going against Mortu Macabre teams or whether I'm going against Torment teams. It just seems to work really, really well, and it's probably the safest way to get through Doom Tower. If you're struggling, definitely recommend bringing in someone with control, and I think he's actually going to be really good at that. Not only does he have 50% chance on his A1, but he also has that AoE that is going to land guaranteed, right? Not guaranteed, they can still resist it, but as long as you have the accuracy levels and you don't get unlucky, it'll land every time because you don't have to worry about the weak hits, which is very nice. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'll let this run a little bit so you can kind of watch him a little bit, see how he plays, and then we'll jump over. I'll remake his kit and we'll jump over to Arena. So Bivald's kind of an interesting champ, right? I think his A3 skill, the big hit that does more damage based off the number of debuffs, that can actually be a pretty significant strike, and it can provide a really nice heal. Not only is it giving a 20% based off the damage to all allies, but also the shield on top of that. And I think you can see with the Leech out there, Bivald was basically able to heal himself fully just off of that skill. It's actually pretty solid. But of course, you know, there's prep that you got to do. You got to get the debuffs out there. It helps that there's multiple enemies to give you that heal. I think that's a major thing. It's not going to work for every situation, but the ones it does, it's pretty solid. Okay, so I put together like a whatever team here for Spider, just so we can get a sense of how this would work. So we're going to get decreased defense and weaken from Lydia here. And we'll get the HP burn going from Ignatius. And then we'll get decreased defense and weaken from Sissia. And we'll see what kind of shield does he put up on everybody. You can see it's a pretty big shield. It's a pretty big shield. It doesn't look as good as somebody like Miscreated Monster or Sir Nicholas would do, but it's significant. That is definitely a pretty solid shield right there. So you can see there are definitely options as far as approaches to this go, and things that he can be really good for. That's pretty unique. So he does have some more utility, I think, out there than maybe we all were expecting initially, right? So that's definitely something to kind of keep in mind as you're going through. And not to mention, he's got control on top of that. In addition to the shield, he's provoking the spiderlings, which will help keep everybody else alive and focus them to attack him, which is great because he's not exactly strong. He's neutral affinity against Spider 20. So I think there's definitely some usage, whether it's progression in dungeons or especially, I think now we can see, even in Spider, he can be a pretty decent little champion. Okay, I was able to redo Bivald of the Thorn with all accuracy sets, and I didn't need to change his masteries or anything. We were still able to do it. So I still have him in Helm Smasher, and we have 619 accuracy, 100% crit rate, 142 crit damage, 249 speed. I think this should be enough for how I plan to utilize him in this team. So yeah, we can go ahead and check it out and see what we can do here. So the way I want to use him is in Arena. Now, obviously, everything's kind of a little bit of a mess right now because of this. So I'm going to bring him into 3v3 tag team arena, and it should be able to give us a decent look of how I would utilize him on my team. So one of the things I would use is I would probably bring him into my main team, like you can see here, where it's my second team, but basically he's going to go between, Siffi's going to go first as my fastest, then Kaimar's going to strip the enemy buffs. Then Bivald will go and lock them down with that provoke, not allowing them to take their turn, and that would allow Solus to come in and nuke. Okay, so Siffi's going to go first, Kaimar's going to strip that immunity off Basher, and then hopefully we'll be able to lock them down with Bivald. So there goes Siffi. Kaimar here is going to strip all the buffs and put them to sleep, and that's going to give Bivald enough time, and he's fast enough, as you can see, to go ahead and get this provoke and leech out there. You can see, you know, for the squishier champions, he's doing okay damage. It's not like it's a bad result that we've got going on there. We can lock that feller down there, no problem. And then, of course, you know, we can clean it up right there. Okay, now this is my go second style team here, where I have Bivald and Magnar in there for DPS. Now, Rio is one of the champions I love bringing in for go second teams. She's kind of OP for this because she can resist and then instantly cleanse like this right here. And I am cheating with having Necrit protecting Bivald, but I think it's going to work out great. You see, we have survived that first attack from the enemy. We get to go now. We're going to place that provoke out there on the enemy. Now, we didn't land the provoke on Foley because Foley can't get provoked, right? It's a passive ability, but everybody else has been hit with it, have the leech out there, and allows us to come in with Magnar and just nuke them down. Doesn't matter. They're all provoked, so even if they get a chance to go, it's not going to affect us whatsoever. It makes life a lot easier, right? And so these are kind of the things that I like to look at, you know, as a possible way to be able to use this champion. Because he can land that provoke, regardless of affinity, makes it a lot easier to use him in things like Arena, as long as you can get the timing right. So is Bivald good or not? I think he's okay. He's not a great damage dealer at all, and that really lowers his ceiling as far as the abilities that he can bring for your team. He does definitely have some utility, both in Arena. I think, you know, being able to place a provoke without weak hits is a really massive boost. Affinity matters a lot in the Arena, and there's a lot of blue champions out there, so being able to, for him to land those debuffs is really helpful. And I think he's going to be really good for waves. I actually think maybe one of his best spots might be for Spider with that massive shield of his. I mean, it's a 4-turn cooldown, so that's not great. It's a little longer than I would like, honestly. But, you know, that's a massive thing to keep your team alive, and it comes with a big heal as well. Not to mention adding that provoke really can help the rest of your team survive if you're struggling with Spider. So I think, you know, anybody in the mid game, this is going to be a fusion probably worth getting, because he's going to help you advance in the areas you need advancement in, and that's really what you want out of these champions. If, however, you've done all your dungeon progression, you're doing fine in your Doom Tower progression, you know, even if you're not at the top yet, as long as you have like a system and a plan in place, I don't know that you're going to need this champion. I'll be honest, I'm going to do the fusion because I do them all, and I always feel like if you have a free chance to get a free legendary, it's good, but I'm not excited about this guy. You know, keep all that stuff with, like, you know, keep all that in mind. Yeah, it's all like, you know, a little grain of salt here about, you know, how good can a champion be, where they're going to be best and stuff like that. I would say, you know, fuse them if you can, but if you decide not to, I don't think that's a bad choice at all. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I know it went a little longer than I was expecting, but I did want to kind of show you everything that I could. So hopefully this helped you figure out, you know, whether this is a champion you really want to use or not. And, you know, pay attention. There's some really smart CCs out there that can, I'm sure, come up with some really creative ways to use this champion, especially in Arena, right? I think he does have a place there. It's just probably not going to be a platinum place. It will definitely be good for most of gold and anything under that. As, you know, it's more about the gear that you're using rather than the champion. So keep all that in mind. And yeah, so subscribe, hit that notification bell, and until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.